Martha reached the age of 65 before she found the courage to express her innermost feelings. She found herself without a pension, without retirement savings, without a partner to share her life, and perhaps most heart-wrenching of all, she no longer had a role in the life of the one person for whom she had given up everything, her son. To those observing from a distance, Martha appeared to be merely an older woman residing alone in a modest rented apartment close to the city center. Calm, modest, unnoticed. Yet beneath that calm facade lay a profound journey filled with affection, sorrow, and resilience. She had nurtured a child, laid a husband to rest, toiled tirelessly for years, and yet found herself with little more than shelter and an emptiness within. For many years, Martha held the belief that aging equated to a gradual fading away, thinking that if she lacked utility, she lacked value. She felt that her value was linked to her contributions rather than her identity. However, what she would discover and experience is that there is a profound strength in beginning anew even later in life. This narrative does not revolve around the theme of loss. This narrative explores the journey of a woman who discovered tranquility in her own way. She made the decision to prioritize herself not out of obligation, but because she came to realize her inherent value. If you have ever experienced feelings of being overlooked, marginalized, or abandoned, then perhaps this narrative resonates with you too. One, the grief experience when everything unraveled. Martha had always held the conviction that advancing years would bring tranquility. She envisioned tranquil evenings on the porch with her husband Tom, observing the sky transition to a soft pink hue over the rolling hills of Kentucky. She envisioned Sunday dinners with her son, and perhaps one day grandchildren joyfully playing in the yard. That was the vision she had crafted for herself, a serene, uncomplicated existence brimming with affection. However, she would eventually realize that life doesn't always adhere to the plans we cherish so deeply. The day Tom passed away was marked by a chill in the air. The sky had taken on a muted gray hue by mid-morning, and a gentle mist enveloped the fields. Tom departed the house before dawn, as was his usual routine. He gently pressed his lips to her forehead, filled his thermos with coffee, and remarked, "Don't wait up, hun." Although she never did on that particular day, she would have sacrificed anything to have stayed awake for him. The call arrived just after midday. A supervisor with a deep tone informed her that an incident had occurred. A structure gave way. Tom had already left before the ambulance could get there. No one could have changed the outcome. Initially, she remained composed. Her hands shook slightly, yet her gaze remained composed. She ended the call and returned to the kitchen where a pot of beef stew simmered gently on the stove. She switched off the burner, took a seat at the table, and gazed at the floor, lost in thought for what felt like hours. The funeral felt like a haze. Individuals engaged in conversation. Fingers made contact with her shoulder. Casseroles filled the counter. But Martha experienced a sense of detachment, as if she were an observer of another person's life unraveling. A week later, the representative from the construction company arrived at her doorstep. He averted his gaze as he passed her the check. He mentioned that the organization lacked adequate insurance coverage. He mentioned that they were struggling to keep their heads above water. He mentioned that $40,000 was the most favorable option they could provide. "If you choose to pursue this in court, that is your prerogative," he remarked, not without compassion. Yet his tone conveyed that it may not lead to a favorable outcome. However, the funds may not be available. It's either this or there's no alternative. Martha examined the check intently. Her hands bore the marks of toil, dry and cracked from years spent laboring in the fields, yet they shook like a fragile leaf as she clutched that slip of paper. $40,000. It felt like a sudden jolt. It seemed like compensation tainted by guilt. Nevertheless, she accepted it. She carefully folded the check and tucked it away in the back of the drawer, alongside Tom's wallet, his reading glasses, and the watch that had been a constant presence in his life for 2 decades. She kept it to herself, not even confiding in Jacob. She found it unbearable to articulate that her husband's life had been diminished to a sum less than what some individuals spend on a new vehicle. In the absence of Tom's financial contribution, the situation became quite challenging. The home was reasonably priced, yet the expenses accumulated rapidly. Heating, oil, groceries, property taxes. She ceased purchasing meat. She maximized every dollar. She took on repair tasks for those living nearby, mended garments and traded eggs from the coop. Jacob, who is currently navigating high school, made an effort to assist in his own unique manner. He suggested for going college to start working immediately, but Martha was adamant against the idea. "Your father wished for more for you," she said to him. "You'll reach it." Yet beneath the surface, she felt a sense of fear. Not merely the burden of bills, nor the solitude, but the fear of slipping away silently, with no one remaining to share her narrative. To the act of selflessness, dedicating everything to those we cherish. Jacob exhibited a strong drive, even in moments of uncertainty about his direction. Following graduation, his exam results fell short of the requirements for college scholarships, and they lacked the financial means to cover tuition independently. He was filled with an intense restlessness, brimming with energy and aspirations, resolute in his desire to escape the confines of their small town. "I have a desire to visit Chicago," he expressed to her one morning while they shared toast. "There are opportunities available jobs in mechanics. I can earn a substantial income, Mom." Martha felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. However, she acknowledged with a nod. She felt it was important not to impede his progress. At 18, he brimmed with passion and held a strong conviction in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. What could lead her to be the one to refuse prior to his departure? She handed him $1,000 in cash. Funds she had accumulated over several months by being resourceful in every possible way. In a moment of concern, she advised him, only engage with it if absolutely necessary. Jacob embraced her warmly, pressed a kiss to her cheek, and assured her he would make a call every Sunday. Initially, he did. He made his weekly calls just as promised. He shared with her the experience of the city, describing the rapid pace of life, the overwhelming noise, and the stark contrast it presented compared to the familiarity of home. He mentioned that he was employed at a repair shop beginning with oil changes and tire rotations, and noted that the manager had a favorable impression of him. Then one Sunday, the atmosphere of the call shifted. He appeared anxious, uncertain. "Mom," he said, "can I ask you something?" He shared that the cost of rent was quite high, $1,000 per month just for a studio apartment. "That's $12,000 a year just vanishing," he remarked. "It feels as though I'm just discarding my resources." Then arrived the request. "With a bit of support, I could acquire something, perhaps a modest space. I discovered a unit that perfectly fits my needs, and the bank has approved my loan application. However, I require assistance with the down payment. I was considering the possibility of the funds from my father." Martha experienced a constriction in her chest. The funds remained dormant for almost 2 years. She regarded it as something precious. Tom's ultimate offering, a safeguard for unforeseen circumstances. Her contingency strategy in case all else crumbled. Even so, Jacob's voice carried a gentle warmth brimming with optimism. "This is for us, Mom. For you as well. One day I will take you to the city. We'll share the apartment once I reach a sufficient level of financial stability. There's no need for concern any longer." She yearned to trust him. She required reassurance from him, so she agreed. The following day, she visited the bank and moved the entire $40,000 into her son's account. Jacob acquired the apartment. It was modest and still a work in progress, yet it belonged to him. He shared a photograph with her. Empty walls, a mattress resting on the floor, a solitary window framing the distant city skyline. Martha printed it out and affixed it to the wall above her sewing machine. She observed it daily. She began to put in more effort, cultivated more in the garden, accepted additional sewing repairs, raised 2 pigs instead of one, sold everything she could during the holiday season, and sent him the profits. When Jacob returned home that first Christmas, she presented him with $500 in cash. She mentioned it in relation to paint or furniture. He offered a smile and accepted it, yet remained largely silent. She never sought anything in exchange. There was no necessity for her to do so. The brief spark of happiness she observed in his gaze was sufficient. That was her own narrative. What she was unaware of at that moment, what was beyond her understanding, was that this would mark the start of a gradual disintegration, a place where commitments dissolved into quietude, a scenario in which affection is overlooked, and a situation where Martha must discover the resilience to reconstruct her life once more, not through her son, but through her own experiences. 3. The unseen mother. Overlooked yet present. The passage of time can gradually weaken even the strongest connections when the investment from both sides diminishes. For Martha, the space between her and Jacob had expanded subtly, much like dust, accumulating in the corners of a room that was once filled with life. Initially, the conversations occurred weekly, then transitioned to bi-weekly. Over time, their interactions turned erratic, inconsistent, hurried, and frequently sparked by her instead of him. Martha remained silent on the matter. She reassured herself that Jacob was likely preoccupied with adapting to urban life, perhaps even feeling inundated by his job or financial responsibilities. Yet she sensed it. The quietude, the distance, the gradual unfolding of intimacy. Nevertheless, she continued to send him thoughtful care packages, including batches of cookies, cozy wool socks, and letters with $10 bills carefully tucked inside. She included small annotations with each one. Take care of yourself, remember to nourish your body, and know that you are always cherished. Jacob seldom replied, yet she held on to the belief that he valued them. Deep down, he continued to sense her affection, even if those words remained unspoken. Then the ceremony took place, not via a phone call, not through Jacob, but through a neighbor. On a clear autumn morning, while Martha was gathering her laundry from the line, her neighbor Connie approached her holding a cheerful envelope. "I believe this may have been sent to me in error," she remarked, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Congratulations." Martha gazed at the envelope with a mix of anticipation and curiosity. Her hands felt unexpectedly burdensome. Within the envelope lay an invitation featuring graceful handwriting, substantial cardstock, and a gilded edge. Jacob was getting married. The wedding was in 2 weeks. In Chicago, she read it again and again. The words didn't change, but her heart did. First disbelief, then confusion, then something harder. Grief he hadn't called, hadn't told her, not even a mention. For 3 days, she said nothing to anyone. She carefully folded the invitation and set it beside the photo of Jacob that rested on her nightstand. As night fell, she gazed at it, pondering. Was I not meant to know? Or did he just overlook the possibility that I would want to be present? On the 4th day, she reached a decision. She gathered her finest dress, a navy blue piece, with a modest neckline and lace trim that had accompanied her to church weddings throughout the years. She secured a bus ticket to Chicago, a lengthy journey of 12 hours with 2 transfers awaited her. Yet she felt no hesitation. She was determined to go to be present. The chapel was stunning, contemporary, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows and white roses adorning the aisle. Everything exuded elegance, meticulously curated. The guests donned tailored suits and pastel dresses, their smiles appearing polished and rehearsed. Martha discovered her name on a place card positioned at the back of the hall. Her assigned seat was in the last row adjacent to the door. She sat in silence, her hands folded neatly in her lap. No one acknowledged her presence. No one inquired about her identity, not even Jacob. As the music crescendoed and he made his way down the aisle, he failed to glance her way. Not a single time. Tears welled in her eyes, but she managed to blink them back. She was reluctant to draw attention to herself. She sought no sympathy. All she desired was to briefly experience the warmth of being his mother once more. Yet that feeling eluded her. At the reception, she positioned herself against the wall, observing from afar. She watched her son dance with his bride, share laughter with her family, and raise a glass in celebration. Martha attempted to make eye contact with him. She raised her hand once lacking conviction. He never glanced her way. No one invited her to be part of the photos. No one asked her to stand next to the bride and groom. It felt as though she was invisible. She departed before dessert was served. That night in the modest motel room near the Greyhound station, Martha sat on the edge of the bed, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with unspoken words. She murmured into the void, not anticipating a response. I doubt he noticed my presence. 4. The sense of betrayal lingered. Used, overlooked, cast aside. Following the wedding, the silence deepened. Jacob ceased to reach out. Weeks morphed into months. The parcels Martha dispatched fell into oblivion. Her voicemails remained unheard, and birthday cards went unrecognized. She reassured herself that he was preoccupied with his new life and adapting to marriage. Yet beneath the surface, she recognized that she was no longer included in that narrative. Then one afternoon, she received the most heart-wrenching news of all, not from her son, but from a neighbor down the road. "Jacob's a father now, isn't he?" Connie inquired nonchalantly. Someone mentioned his wife just had a baby girl. Martha felt as though the breath had been taken from her. She hadn't been aware. There had been no communication, no message, not even a picture. A granddaughter, her first grandchild, and she had been left in the dark. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and dialed Jacob's number. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. It wasn't him. It was her daughter-in-law. "Oh," she said flatly. "It's you." Martha tried to maintain her composure. "I just heard about the baby. I didn't know." The response was pointed. "Well, we've been occupied. Jacob has a lot happening. We didn't have the opportunity to inform everyone. I would have offered my assistance," Martha said gently. "I could have, I don't know, just been there." There was silence. Then the voice on the line shifted tone. "If you really want to help, you can come take care of the baby. We're both working. We need someone during the week." Martha blinked. "I'm not sure I can. I mean, my back isn't what it used to be. I have trouble lifting." The voice cut in. "If you're past the point of being able to assist, perhaps it's unreasonable to anticipate anything from us. Do you expect Jacob to look after you? Then you must contribute in some way." Those words resonated more profoundly than any quiet moment could. Martha found herself in the center of her kitchen, gripping the phone as if it were searing her skin. Her knuckles turned pale. She remained silent. After hanging up, she stayed still for a considerable time. The late afternoon light streamed through the window, casting golden stripes on the floor. Outside, birds chirped as they did every day. Yet within her, a transformation was occurring. It transcended mere pain. It was a newfound understanding. For the first time, she perceived reality with clarity. She had invested everything, her resources, her time, her emotions without hesitation. Now she felt like a mere obligation, a presence to be utilized when convenient and overlooked otherwise. Sitting at the table that Tom had crafted long ago, she gazed out at the vacant yard. In that stillness, she reached a conclusion. She would not plead. She would not linger for a call that could remain unanswered. After years of prioritizing others, it was finally her moment to focus on her own needs. 5. The pivotal moment, the day she prioritized herself. In the days following the conversation with her daughter-in-law, Martha kept to herself, hardly engaging with anyone. She held back her tears. She didn't pace the floor. She didn't shout. She simply paused. She paused, waiting for the phone to ring. She paused, planning packages she might never send. She paused, checking the mailbox for letters that wouldn't arrive. Instead, she began to observe her surroundings, not at what was present, but at what was absent. Tom was gone. Jacob was gone. The laughter, the warmth, the dinners, the holidays, the quiet joy of a life shared, they were gone too. The house had grown heavy with silence. Every creaking floorboard and ticking clock echoed louder than words. She would wake early out of habit, but stay in bed because there was no reason to get up. She would walk past the pantry stocked with jars she had canned for someone who never came home. She would sweep the same spot on the porch out of habit, even though no one ever walked those steps anymore. Then one morning, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come like a revelation from above. It manifested as a familiar ache in her hip as she bent to feed the hens. A simple pain, yet one that quietly posed a question. If not now, when? She rose gradually, gazing over the yard at the weathered barn, and softly murmured to the morning breeze, "What am I still waiting for?" No response was given, yet she was already aware of the truth. Nothing. No one. That afternoon, she took a fresh notepad and started to jot down her thoughts. She enumerated her possessions, what could be sold and what was essential. She reached out to a realtor. She scheduled a visit to the bank. She explored online listings for small apartments in neighboring towns, looking for areas with sidewalks, grocery stores, public libraries, and a sense of community. This decision wasn't about escaping. It wasn't driven by a desire for retribution. It wasn't solely about feeling isolated. It was connected to something more profound, something she had refrained from acknowledging for years: self-respect. She had always believed that motherhood required sacrifice, endurance, and giving without the expectation of return. While that held some truth, she realized she was more than just a mother. She was still a woman, a complete individual, and that individual deserved tranquility. So she made the decision to sell the farmhouse. She sifted through boxes filled with remnants of the past, making decisions about what to retain and what to release. Gently, she wrapped Tom's photograph in a soft towel and placed it with care. She donated clothes, furniture, and even the fine china she had reserved for celebrations that never materialized. With all her belongings loaded into the back of a borrowed pickup truck, she drove away. There was no bitterness in her departure. She left free. 6. The rebirth. Finding peace on her own terms. Martha's new apartment wasn't much. A one-bedroom unit in a modest brick building just outside the city limits. The walls were thin and the kitchen was barely big enough for two people to stand in. But it had sunlight. It had warmth. It had silence that didn't ache. It comforted. Her neighbors exhibited a gentle demeanor, often engaging in subtle gestures of kindness, such as nodding in the hallway and holding doors open. She appreciated this atmosphere. She secured a position at the local church where she assisted with cleaning duties in the early mornings prior to the congregation's arrival. While the job lacked glamour, it provided a modest income, sufficient to manage groceries, utilities, and the rare indulgence of a cup of coffee at the diner across the street. However, the job provided her with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in a long time. Each morning, she would rise before dawn, secure her hair slip into her cozy shoes, and stroll the short distance to the church with a little radio tucked in her coat pocket. She would softly sing along to the classic tunes, clean the floors, wipe down the pews, and light a few candles discreetly. At times, she would find herself sitting quietly in the back pew before departing. It wasn't so much about prayer, but rather about simply breathing. For the first time in a long while, that was sufficient. Her days began to unfold in a soothing cadence: grocery shopping on Tuesdays, laundry on Thursdays, and writing letters to herself on Sunday afternoons. She had stopped sending anything to Jacob. No more money, no more care packages, no more voicemails. She wasn't sure would ever be heard. At first, that silence felt strange, but then it began to feel like empowerment. She started planting herbs in small pots by the window. She hung a wind chime outside her door. She bought herself flowers from the corner store on Fridays. Occasionally, she would observe a mother strolling with her child, and a familiar ache would settle in her chest. Genuine affection never fades. Yet she had learned to no longer allow it to dominate her life. She had fulfilled her role, offering everything she had to give. Now it was time for her. One evening, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, she gazed out at the streetlights, filtering through her delicate curtains, and for the first time in years, she experienced a profound sense of tranquility. Not the comfort that arises from external support, but the comfort that stems from self-reliance. She murmured softly to herself, I am still present, and that is sufficient. And that was the reality. She possessed no retirement fund. She had no financial cushion. There was no offspring ready to assist her. Yet she had herself, her unwavering hands, her keen intellect, her composed grace, her renewed existence. In that moment, she possessed all that was necessary. You are not isolated. Martha's experience is not unique. It is subtle, it is widespread, and that is what lends it such strength. Countless women, after dedicating their lives to others, nurturing children, supporting partners, maintaining family unity, discover they have been neglected, overlooked, and are left to navigate how to endure the years they were promised would be peaceful. However, Martha made a different choice. She prioritized her own well-being. In that decision, she highlighted a fundamental truth that often goes unacknowledged. Even in the absence of financial security support or companionship, your value remains intact. You are significant. You are entitled to tranquility. So if you find yourself in a quiet moment, perhaps with a cup of tea, and feeling as though life has moved on without you, hold on to this reminder. You are seen. You are whole. You are not a weight to carry. You are a person with experiences, insights, and resilience. It's always the right time to embrace your life as you wish. You are supported. You always have been.